Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Brookings Institution. I am Beatrice, or B. Welters, and I am a board trustee here at Brookings. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today. But first, before we begin the program, I would like to begin by taking a moment of silence, or having a moment of silence, to honor the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush. Thank you. Thank you. And I think later on today, the motorcade will be passing by, so we will probably pause for a moment as it passes. Thank you for being here today for this important discussion. I also want to thank General John Allen, the president of Brookings, and members of his leadership team for being here, and especially for their support of this research. I hope that this joint Brookings-Gallup study will influence public debate and policy and sharpen our country's focus on shared economic prosperity. At Brookings, we call this impact. We're proud to have partnered with Gallup in looking at how racism has affected African Americans' ability to realize the benefits of home ownership enjoyed by their fellow citizens. Today's event focuses on the study of how racism has impacted the value of housing in Black neighborhoods, authored by Andre Perry and David Harshbarger of Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program and Jonathan Rothwell from Gallup. As you'll hear from Andre, the report seeks to understand how much money majority Black communities have lost and are still losing. Andre also will discuss the social implications of these findings. Before I introduce Andre, I'd like to first acknowledge Amy Liu, the director of the Metro program. Amy has a unique ability to translate research into real-life strategies for economic growth and opportunity. She has earned the respect of the board of Brookings and the President John Allen, and the gratitude of countless individuals in cities and towns throughout the United States. Thank you, Amy. Now, no introduction of Dr. Perry, of Andre, would be complete without describing the impact he's had on Brookings over the last 18 months as a David M. Rubenstein Fellow in Metro. He has covered a surprising amount of ground, both in neighborhoods around the country and his writings, which are and have been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Hettinger Report, The Root, and many others. But I was particularly touched and moved by his recent op-ed in the New York Times describing his childhood in a neighborhood right next door to Squirrel Hill, Pennsylvania. Squirrel Hill is where 11 persons were killed last October while attending their services at the synagogue. Andre said that he felt welcome at Squirrel Hill. For him, Squirrel Hill was proof that if we try, we can live together. His reflections made these needless murders even more tragic. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. I'd like to remind everyone that this event is on the record and being recorded. You can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag at Black Home Ownership. And it says the handle's right behind me, but okay. There it is. Great. I'm sorry, I'm looking here. Okay. Following Andrew is my son's name, so I get that confused. Andre's presentation, you'll be hearing from two panels of experts who will dive into the research examining the implications, root causes, and discuss policy solutions, both current and proposed, to combat racial bias in the housing market. So without further ado, Andre, Terry.
We don't typically play music here at Brookings, particularly hip hop. But I wanted to start off with providing some the context of motivation for this study and other studies that I do. One of my favorite rappers, hip hop artists is Yassine Bey, better known as Mos Def, and his song "Fear of Man." If you're a hip hop snob, you know these words that he utters in spoken word, because at Brookings, particularly in the Metro program, we seek to improve conditions in neighborhoods so that we can improve people's lives. It's about the people. And most Defs ask, then how do people get better? Well, from my understanding, people get better when they understand that they are valuable. Over the last 6 months, 8 months or so, I've had the opportunity to go back to my hometown in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. It's surrounded by the city of Pittsburgh. And I get to visit my home once a month, and I visit. I literally run past my home just to see what it looks like. Many of you know I was informally adopted. An older woman, when I was born, she was 63. She took in kids from around the city. She raised probably between 12 to 15 kids, coming from very challenging circumstances. And it just always surprises me that when I see this home listed on the vacant property list, it's literally worthless in a lot of people's eyes. And so my purpose is to show that there is value in black communities, majority black communities. There are things worth saving, and particularly the American dream. Homeownership lies at the heart of the American dream, representing success, opportunity, and wealth, and it should. Compared to investing in the stock market and other ways to grow a nest egg, home ownership is still the most consistent and accessible way to build wealth over time. And while home ownership rates vary considerably between whites and people of color, it's typically the largest asset among all people who hold it, regardless of race. We've known for some time that racism limited blacks' housing options in ways that lowered values of homes. De jure and de facto segregation, racially restrictive housing covenants that prohibited blacks from buying in certain areas, racially based redlining, which deemed majority black neighborhoods too risky for mortgage lenders, isolated blacks in areas that realized lower levels of investment than their white counterparts. Without question, these racist policies and practices had an effect. My co-authors, Jonathan Rothwell of Gallup and David Harshbarger of Brookings, and I found that in average, the U.S. metropolitan area, homes in neighborhoods where the share of the population is at least 50% black are valued at roughly half the price as homes in neighborhoods with little to no black residents. You can see that on the slide here, on the x-axis, the bottom line, as the percent of black residents go up, the price of the homes go down. Most people end right there. Even for those who acknowledge our racist history, the 50% price difference isn't about racial bias. It's about accepting the effects of the past at face value. It's assumed lower housing quality, underfunded schools, and crime, all consequences or effects of racism and poverty, set a deserving price point. Our study tested those assumptions. We examined homes of similar quality in congruent neighborhoods with the exception of racial demographics to make an apples to apples comparison between places where the share of the black population is 50% or higher and those where there are little to no black residents. So we took those absolute values and we controlled for numerous structural features of the home, like the number of beds, the size, and various neighborhood characteristics and amenities like education, crime, and the number of libraries and gas stations nearby. I want you to sit on this for a minute. What we found astounds. Differences in home and neighborhood quality do not fully explain the price difference. Homes of similar quality in neighborhoods with similar amenities are worth 23% less in majority black neighborhoods compared to those with very few or no black residents. After accounting for other factors such as housing quality, neighborhood quality, education, crime, owner-occupied homes in black neighborhoods are undervalued by $48,000, and that amounts to $156 billion in cumulative losses. $156 billion. Devaluation means municipalities with significant percentage of African Americans lose tax revenue that could be put towards government services and infrastructure. Racism robs money that residents and government officials use to uplift social status. Bigotry imposes a black tax on residents of majority black neighborhoods that white neighborhoods simply don't face. These stark price differences due to devaluation sound the, and I want to show you this wonderful interactive developed by our good colleague Alec with Metro and was featured on MSNBC. And I encourage everyone to go to that interactive to see what's going on in their metro area. The large pink circles represent those places where devaluation are the largest, and the green areas where there are homes in black neighborhoods that are worth more. And I just wanted to show a few cities to show the difference. Lynchburg, Virginia, 81% difference. Rochester, New York, 65%. My hometown of Pittsburgh, 12%. But I want to, what does $156 billion mean? What does it mean? If you take the average of what a black business has for average revenue for a startup, it would fund 4.4 million black-owned businesses. It would fund 8.1 million four-year degrees at public colleges and universities. It would replace the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times. It would essentially fund the cost of the damages of Hurricane Katrina. These stark price differences due to devaluation sound the alarm that it's past time to put away the cultural pathology narrative and naming reasons why black people and their neighborhoods aren't doing as well as they should. Think about the rhetoric around single mothers causing poverty. Believe it or not, there are still people who continue to blame not getting married rather than fixing systemic problems of unequal pay, tax policies that favor the rich, and discrimination in housing and employment. You know, the factors that actually determine how much money people make. Since 1965, when Assistant Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan published his report, The Negro Family, The Case for National Action, better known as the Moynihan Report, researchers and journalists have continued framing poverty mainly as individual choice, i.e. mothers form families that put children in harm's way, i.e. mothers that put families in harm's way. Again, my motivation is clear with this. Moynihan also offered robust structural analyses of economic and social conditions that help shape the black family structure. However, he set a dangerous template by identifying the main problem as black people not living up to the white middle class ideals. It's a mold that researchers of black people willfully maintain to this day. And you hear people talk about narrative change. We need to make narrative change. This project is about changing the narrative. And when people reflectively say after something bad goes wrong in a black community, it all starts at home. I want them to shift from talking about this cultural pathology to one of structural racism. That's the narrative change that I'm seeking. Instead of blaming the victim, we can address the racism that has infected the housing buying market that comprises of mortgage professionals, lenders, real estate agents, and appraisers, whose judgments on valuation can have outside negative impacts. We must address racism, which is tangible, measurable, and costly if blacks are ever to benefit from the American dream. Blacks clearly didn't bias the market to disadvantage ourselves, and we should not shoulder the blame of that reality. Clearly, we need better policies to give homes in black neighborhoods, their proper value. But we must also recognize that there is nothing wrong with black people that ending racism can't solve. If we really want community to, you can clap that up. And you can tweet it out too. Finally, another motivation, as you can see, I draw upon art and culture a lot. My favorite play in all the world is Two Trains Running by August Wilson, the famous playwright. And in the play, the main character, Memphis, who's about to have his business seized through eminent domain because the city of Pittsburgh was building the Civic Arena. And that's actually how the person who raised me ended up in Wilkinsburg. She was pushed out of the Hill District. The main character says to the city, no, I'm not going to sell my business for $15,000. I know my price. He goes back and forth with the city throughout the play. I know my price. I got my price. There's another character in the play, Hambone. He paints a fence for a ham. He paints the fence. He never gets his ham. He goes back and forth with a proprietor, and he says, give me my ham. I need my ham, until he goes crazy and eventually dies. The main character actually it's a happy ending. He actually gets $30,000, about $10,000 more than what he originally asked for. And the moral of the story is, know that you have value. Know that you have worth. This report is not for the muckety-mucks that we typically, yes, they can read it, and I want them to read it. But I'm giving this report to the people who need to see that they have value. Our property, our schools, our education, they have value, but they are devalued by others, and it has negative implications. I welcome you to send me information so that you can join our crew, David and Jonathan. I'm trying to form a crew, trying to get it together, form like Voltron, have all these different parts. And we're going to do good work. This is about housing, but it is also about policing, also about education. It's just that housing is such the foundation that without this major revenue source being maximized, a lot of other parts of our lives start to fall apart. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos from Brookings.